Hello, everyone. Welcome to Goy Meets World. We're doing Bible study today. We're going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 8. I'm excited for this one. I hope that Joseph comes and gives me a hard time because I have questions to ask. I have very important questions to ask because I don't just want my opinion to be the one put forward. Link is in the chat. I'm going to go away for 5 minutes. When I come back, we're going to talk about 2 Samuel 8, and then we're going to get to 9. I'm sure we'll get to 9, unless Joseph shows up and gives us so many details that we didn't realize just how rich the text was. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to be delayed in a good way? Yoav is already there. Do I give Yoav, do I give the 5 minutes? Or do we just go into it right away? Okay, we're going to give 5 minutes. All right. So I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to bother a bunch of other people to show up, as I often do. See you in 5. Hello, my friends. I'm back. Oh, there's Cassandra. Cassandra, how are you doing?
I'm good. Good day so far. Very cloudy here and cold.
Okay. We had a massive snowstorm overnight. It was pretty crazy. So in the morning, I helped my wife for like half an hour. I was digging her out. Yoav, have you even seen snow?
We had some rain, you know. Almost no winter we have nothing, but in February we started to have some rain.
Okay.
The last snow in Tel Aviv was 1949.
Okay. That was a while ago. My dad grew up in Malta, which is in the Mediterranean, and he grew up the static on television. Like it was very common in North America, they would call that snow. But my dad grew up calling it rice because he had never seen snow. So it was just rice. There's rice on TV. That's what they
We
call
do
it.
have snow on the mountains in Jerusalem and in Tzafed. Not every year, but quite often.
That's right. And where's the ski resort? There's a ski resort that's on a famous mountain. Oh, that's gonna bother me. Which one am I thinking of? The ski resort, and also like there's like a weird spy thing at the bottom. I don't know.
Yeah, because it's Mount Hermon. It's the tallest mountain in the Golan Heights.
That's right.
And on the top of the mountain used to belong to Syria, but because of all sorts of ceasefire agreements, I think it was manned by the Austrians. The Austrian army manned that peak. And now with the fall of Syria, I would guess the Austrians are still there because nobody told them to leave.
And do you know the other part about Mount Hermon? Do you know what it's in Enoch, what it's famous for?
All the mountains in my country are famous for something.
Okay. In the book of Enoch, Mount Hermon is where the watchers, the angels that leave, that's where they bind themselves with an oath. In fact,
okay, now the watchers and the Austrians. This is how it is populated.
Okay, so that's the Austrians are the fallen sons of God. That's fine. I can accept that. It also has where Baal lived, unless I'm mistaken. Plays a role in the Epic of Gilgamesh. You know, maybe you want to go into the gates of hell, maybe see Baal, or maybe you just want to go skiing. You know,
okay,
whatever.
So I never been to the highest peak of the mountain, but one peak just below, we have a ski resort. We have an Israeli ski resort, and I've been there once or twice. Mm-hmm. Not that I know how to ski, but you know, one goes there to see how snow looks like.
Yeah, that's can you share this? Well, and it's fascinating how much how much colder things get just by going up. Right there.
Yeah, even though you're getting closer to the sun.
There it is. There's the Mount Hermon ski resort. Okay. Let's get into the text. We're not going to talk about snow anymore. Why did I get into snow? Oh, because I'm in the middle of a storm and I wondered if Yoav had ever seen it. Cassandra, you're far enough north.
This is almost the full extent of the site. It's not much bigger than what the picture shows you.
Okay. Special guest, founding member of the show, back when we were just talking about judges. Hi, Jason.
What's up? Hey, man. Glad I can make it.
Yeah, I was going back through Jacob's channel to watch the first episode that you guys did together, because that was like over a year ago now.
Yeah, it's anniversary. Cassandra wished me a happy anniversary. Said, hey, it's actually been a year, so that's great.
Whoa. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. You've been doing it a whole year now. That's crazy.
And Jason, last week I talked about you for a little minute because you encouraged the heck out of me after we just did like a regular show. It was nothing special. We just talked about the Bible, and I was like, why was he so encouraging this week?
I just love it, man. I think this is my favorite thing in this little corner or whatever, wherever it is, Jordan Peterson's beer, whatever they call it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just every time you guys do this, I think it's the best stuff on here.
Awesome. I will take this compliment. Cassandra will take this compliment. Yoav will blush and brush it off and pretend that he didn't care. Why did I do that? Why did I throw you under the bus? I'm sorry. Okay, we got the text forward. Let's get into it. Jason, you're never here for long, so how about you?
All right, I'd be happy to. All right. After this, David defeated the Philistines and subdued them, and David took Metheg Ammah out of the hand of the Philistines, and he defeated Moab, and he measured them with a line, making them lie down on the ground. 2 lines he measured to be put to death, and 1 full line to be spared. And the Moabites became servants to David and brought tribute. David also defeated.
Okay, let's pause one moment there because, like, whoa. What's interesting is that this actually would have been seen as merciful, not as, like, we read that and we think of it as like extermination, but I think at the time it actually would have been seen as incredibly merciful. Like, instead of utterly destroying his enemies, he spares a third of them, but they become servants. What else is interesting about that, though, is that Ruth is a Moabite and David's great grandmother, right? So it's interesting that as he's becoming established, he's you can see these old allies like the Philistines, who he was allied with for a period of time, and the Moabites, who he would have extended family in. He's at war with. He's subduing them, right? It's a very interesting image to me.
I have a question here. Does anyone know why it says with 2 lines he measured them to be put to death in 1 line? He measured them to be kept alive. Like I think it's my head reading, he just had a dividing line and these people on this side and these people on this side, but then it like has this weird discrepancy with the numbers or something.
I think the elaborate description is to make it clear that it was a lottery, that there was no selection. And it is important because, as you mentioned, he had family in there. So nobody said that the third spared was some kind related to him.
That's very interesting, too, because we talked about Saul. When Saul spared people, it was based on like saving the best. It was he spares the king. He spares Agag, and like it's the opposite of what you're saying right now, Yoav. That is very interesting. Yeah. 3 lines. Ugh. Okay. Oh. Do I want to get into this?
Do it.
A third becomes biblically symbolic and is sometimes connected to. I just made reference to it. Is that in a lot of tradition, it's a third of the angels which fall, and the number of the elders represents a third that they see in heaven. The humans, the 24, is a third of the number of nations which are listed elsewhere. The 72 nations that are like the Table of Nations, if you know that section. 24 is a third of the 72.
So like a third of them actually are, a third of them live? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
2/3 are cut away?
Yeah.
I feel like that gets repeated even in the book of Revelation too. I was trying to look for that real quick. That's interesting.
Yeah, the notion of thirds.
Oh, that's cool. That's why the Bible's so cool.
Okay, we got this, which is apparently the Greek says slaves bringing foreign women, concubine servants confirmed. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure the gender of the servants. I didn't check that. I think it's both male and female.
I lost the thread. What servants are we talking about?
I think right here, because the ones he spares, it says, and the Moabites became servants to David and brought tribute.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he's saying. Yeah, the ones to be spared. That's what he's getting at. Yeah, that's one of the ways they spared people. I really actually don't have much to say about this section, so let's just continue on, shall we? Cassandra, you read now.
David also defeated Hadadezer, the son of Rehob, king of Zobah, as he went to restore his power at the river Euphrates. And David took from him 1,700 horsemen and 20,000 foot soldiers. And David hamstrung all the chariot horses, but left enough for 100 chariots. And when the Syrians of Damascus came to help Hadadezer, king of Zobah, David struck down 22,000 men of the Syrians. Then David put garrisons in Aram of Damascus, and the Syrians became servants to David and brought tribute. And the Lord gave victory to David wherever he went. And David took the shields of gold that were carried by the servants of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem. And from Betah and from Berothai, cities of Hadadezer, King David took very much bronze.
Yeah, so this section that we just got into, this is about like, especially getting the booty. The booty is very important. Oh, Dawn is saying poor horses. Yeah, everyone's feeling hamstrung. The horses. Yeah.
What does that even mean?
It's your
cuts the tendon so they can't run, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
I know that.
Yeah, people are feeling bad about this. This is difficult to talk about. So if in some cases the destroying of the goods, a destruction of the booty, is because you're actually making a statement that you're not profiting, right? So there's this weird aspect of how much David profits from these wars, right? A good example of this is that people who want to talk about what the US's motivations in going to war with the Middle East is they always bring up oil, right? Because the idea is, oh, you say that it's for this reason, but is it really for this secondary reason, right? We still speak in those terms right now, right? And so this idea of what is brought back from him going against them, yeah, so the hamstringing of them could just mean he utterly destroys them, or that it's just what happens while they're in battle. That's part of what you would do.
Is there a connection to Babylon here?
Horses are very expensive to keep. I mean, that was the warning against the king, that he will keep too many horses. So David says, "I'm keeping just as much horses as I need, because the feed will have to come from taxation."
It also is something that establishes you as like more and more of a military superpower, right? Is that by not having the horses, you're being a much more humble group.
What about the bronze then? Because bronze was probably be a metal that was used in weapons, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we've moved into the Iron Age, but you do get bronze continue to be worked in weaponry. Yoav, do you want to talk about that? Because you've talked about before about how this section of text is right after the Bronze Age collapse.
Nothing to say. He took the bronze because all that king had was bronze. If the kid had iron, he would have taken the iron.
Yeah. So this is yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say there's a connection between bronze and Babylon. I think that's why I was asking about that because I thought there was also a connection with the river Euphrates and Babylon as well. Because I thought when Israel got carried captive, they were carried back across the river Euphrates, like by the rivers of Babylon. We sat down, we wept, that song and everything. Yeah. And then at the end of what is it? I think when Solomon builds the temple, I know we haven't gotten there yet. I think there's a lot of reference to bronze. And then when Nebuchadnezzar comes and takes Jerusalem, it just that bronze gets repeated over and over and over again, which I think is related to like different fire imagery as well, because it's going back to the Nehushtan and the fiery serpent and the bronze serpent and all of that seems like all weirdly connected. That's why I was kind of curious to what was happening here and who this Hadazezer is, who's going to the river Euphrates, if there was some sort of connection with weird symbolic connection with that or something.
Well, I'm really glad Yoav brought up the kingship reference because there's this idea that the old enemies become someone you are dependent on. So you become dependent on Babel, you become dependent on Egypt, versus if you are in a position of prospering, these people will come to you with gifts and you will lend them money, but you will borrow nothing. This is let me just read this because we've kind of made reference to it a couple of times. Sorry. There we are. So these are the laws concerning kings from Deuteronomy. When you come to the land that the Lord your God is giving you and you possess it and dwell in it and then say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me. You may indeed set a king over you whom the Lord your God will choose. One from among your brothers you shall set as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you who is not your brother. Only, what's the first only? Only he must not acquire many horses for himself or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses. Since the Lord has said to you, you shall never return that way again. And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he acquire for himself excessive silver and gold. So this little bit of warnings is very interesting because I think it's Solomon. Solomon does get many horses from Egypt, and he gets an Egyptian wife, and he also gets the multiple wives, right, that turn his heart away. The warnings are all already set up.
Yeah.
And I definitely and then the last bit is basically saying that the king should study the book of Deuteronomy so much that he should make out his own copy of it. He should write out himself a copy of the book of the law and read it and study it every single day. That's what our leaders do now, right? Trump is doing daily Bible study with the version of Deuteronomy he wrote out by hand. I'm sure of it. But yeah, thank you, Yoav, for mentioning that. First on the list, don't acquire your king. If he becomes corrupt, he's going to acquire many horses. Right there.
We had a very interesting stream with the famous rabbi the other day. And actually, I think Donald Trump is exempt from that rule of reading the Bible since prophecy has not resumed. When prophecy resumes, then a prophet will give the American their own Bible, and then Donald Trump will read from that Bible.
Yes, yeah, that's good. I really enjoyed that story, the interaction with him and the rabbi. And partway through, I wondered if I was not going to be allowed to do Bible study after it. But the rabbi came around and said that it's good for the Christians to look into Torah. It's just dangerous for the Muslims to do it, is what he said. That comes from Maimonides. Because
that's the time of Maimonides.
Yes, yeah, at the time of
relevant to the time of Maimonides.
Yeah, because the concern is about non-Jews wanting to read Torah, and for Christians, we just have the Torah in our Bible, but the Quran changes the stories, right? So the story of Noah in the Christian Bible is just the story of Noah, but the story of Noah in the Quran is a different version. It changes things. So Maimonides says it's okay that the Christians are coming to read the Bible. That's fine.
That's interesting. I wonder why it changes things. Because it has to rhyme. Doesn't it all rhyme or something like that?
No, I don't want to get into all of this right now.
Let's skip it.
Yeah, the Muslim versions of the Old Testament stories are not the same.
Huh.
It's like when someone watched the movie but didn't read the book. And you go, that didn't happen in the book. And they go, I'm pretty sure it did. And you're just like, no, that was from the movie. That's not how the book ended at all. It's kind of like that. Yeah. And yeah, Kale is they believe, now they do. The Quran does not state this, but Muslims now believe that the Torah was corrupted. Yeah. It was the most summer child question. Oh, my sweet summer child.
I don't even know what that means.
It means you were being just like, you were very innocently walking into a minefield.
Okay.
It's just like, oh, why is that? Is it like because of this? And it's just like, let's not get into it. Okay. We're gonna continue on. Yoav, I've never asked you to read. Will you read English? Are you willing? No, you're not willing. Okay. Cassandra read last. Jason, you read now.
Oh yeah, I could pronounce this. When Toy, how do you say that? Toy, king of Hamath, heard that David had defeated the whole army of Hadazezer. Toy sent his son Joram to King David to ask about his health and to bless him because he had fought against Hadazezer and defeated him. For Hadazezer had often been at war with Toy, and Joram brought with him articles of silver, of gold, and of bronze. These also King David dedicated to the Lord, together with the silver and gold that he dedicated from all the nations he subdued, from Edom, Moab, the Ammonites, the Philistines, Amalek, and from the spoil of Hadazezer, the son of Rehob, king of Zobah.
Okay, so this is the continuation of the stuff about the kingship that continues in Deuteronomy. The idea that the surrounding kings will come and bless you. Things are going well. Everyone's going to show up and bless you and say good things and all that. And Jason just dissipated. That's fine. Mitch? Hi, Mitch.
What's up, guys? Where'd Jason go? He's the reason
I don't know. He fled when he saw you.
He betrayed me for the last time. What are you guys talking about? Samuel?
This is the dusty old book called the Bible. We're in 2 Samuel now.
That's awesome.
Mitch, I'm always going to mute you when you're not talking, okay? Good. Jason, Mitch came specifically to speak with you and you left.
Sorry, I clicked a button that said log in and then it kicked out or something. So I don't know what happened.
Okay. So we get this other bit where these other kings are coming forward and blessing David and giving him presents. Because it's, again, when everything goes bad and the people are wicked, the foreign nations come in not to bless them, but to steal, to loot, to take all these. And these are the items that will be stolen later by people like Nebuchadnezzar when they come in. Jason, end of this section before we go on.
All right. And David made a name for himself when he returned from striking down 18,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt. Then he put garrisons in Edom. Throughout all Edom, he put garrisons, and all the Edomites became David's servants. And the Lord gave victory to David wherever he went.
I don't know if this is good, by the way. The servants bit I don't like because the Edomites are a strange bit because the Edomites are supposed to have an inheritance within the land, except for those that fought Israel as they went into the land. So I guess we could take it that way. There's little hints that there is going to be a fall of David, but I don't know if I'm just projecting that here or if the text. Yoav, does the text just love David right now? Is it entirely positive? Okay, it's entirely positive.
You know what always catches my attention is when they provide numbers, and when it's round numbers, it's not so weird. But when it's like slightly offbeat numbers, I mean, you could chart this throughout the Bible, but I mean, they're just estimating, I guess, that he struck down 18,000, or maybe it was exactly 18,000, depending on how fundamentalist you are.
Yeah. Like it can't be 17,892. That's.
But then sometimes it is, right? I'm thinking this is New Testament, but I remember specifically when they'd say how many fish Peter caught or something. It was like 153. You're like, what? I guess that was their currency to some extent, so maybe that's why. But you do often get numbers in the Old Testament as well that aren't round numbers that seem to be more precise.
Like the end of Daniel, where it says that, it's like, because some of the times it makes sense, where it's like a time, and half a times, and it's like, what is that, like 1,300 and something days? But then at the end of Daniel, it's like weirdly off. It's like, no, go your way, and it'll be this many days or something. And it's really specific number. 1,290.
I love that. I love when it's like I feel we started talking a little bit about the symbolism of numbers, but it seems pretty clear that some people were really into the symbolism of numbers, and I just can't understand it. So it's just like it'll say the number of fish, and you get kind of the idea that the writer is going, huh? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, like this right here. It says, let's see. And from that time, the daily is taken away from the abomination of desolation is set up. There shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. And I'm just like, okay. I don't know what that means.
All right. Cool. Yeah. I think you should bring this back as an expression, though, Jason. I sometimes will say it. If you need to step out for a minute, don't say I'm going to step out for a minute. Just tell people you'll be back in a time, and half a time. See how that goes. Yeah. Okay. According
I don't know anything. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitch.
Oh, no. I was just blabbing about how I didn't know how long or if for what amount of time portions of the Old Testament were orally passed down. but that makes you think really hard about the numbers. If there's any extent of time where they're trying to document, there's no way. I mean, if you see numbers, I'm assuming that the numbers start at the point of written history, or maybe I'm assuming something wrong.
Right. Well, yeah, that's part of the difficulty of numbers bits too, because even our bases of counting are completely different. So I don't know if you guys have counting on your fingers. You can count to 12 on one hand. You just count the knuckles. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you could count to 12 while you're doing something with one hand. You can count to 12 on just one hand, right? So that's part of why you get a base 12. Even arms, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then your legs as well. You get to 12. Also, they have a base 12 system. So then the numbers, what they're representing, like why do you want to get to the number of days? Like why 12 months? Why, like in what systems have 12, don't have 12? It's strange. Okay, let's get back to the text because we can get into numbers for far too long.
Yeah.
Okay, Cassandra, would you read for us, please?
So David reigned over all Israel, and David administered justice and equity to all his people. Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was over the army, and Jehoshaphat, the son of Ahilud, was recorder. And Zadok, the son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, the son of Abiathar, were priests. And Sariah was secretary. And Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and David's sons were priests.
So this is where I wanted Yosef to be responding. I sent him a message yesterday because I'm, of course, Cassandra, you know this because you're here every week. I'm obsessed with this idea of David being a priestly figure. And Yosef assures me that I am incorrect or that I'm not seeing things correctly. Though every now and then he gives me scraps where like David sets up the tent, David sets up the tabernacle. And that is exactly right, Don. And David's sons were priests. What is going on there? I don't know what to do with it because I'm so biased with this line of thinking that David is a priestly figure. He eats the priest's bread. Yes, the text emphasizes that this is weird that he eats the priest's bread. Yeah, he's part of the wrong tribe.
No,
Jason is.
I don't understand. First of all, who are the Kretites and Pletites? Do they appear anywhere else? I mean, they are also priests. Doesn't make sense at all. I just don't understand the language. Who are all those people?
Google is saying that they are two ethnic groups of mercenaries who served as King David's royal guard. They were a separate military unit.
We are not talking about priests. It's the royal guards and David's sons were priests, we are told. So they were. It's a kind of, the word doesn't mean a priest because the foreign royal guard cannot be the priest.
It's okay, but then what does it mean? Because it's Cohen, it's Kohen. It's saying that they're priests.
Yeah, so we don't understand the word Kohanim. We just don't understand it. I mean, it meant something else. I mean, there's no way around it. It doesn't match either way.
I think the Cherethites and Pelethites are part of a different apposition here in the sentence, that they're the people that Benaiah was over. And then we go on to say that David's sons were,
Okay.
were
let's see.
priests.
Yeah, I'm thinking that too. And we get this reference because Zadok is the high priest at this time. And we get that right here. The son of Abiathar were priests.
Okay. When I'm reading the Hebrew, I have Tzadok ben Achituv v'Achimelech ben Aviatar, they are priests. And then Sariah is the writer, is the secretary.
Mhm.
Now, new sentence. Uvnayahu ben Yehoyada, and the Krati, and the Pleti, and the son of David, again are priests. We already had priests. And now we have completely unrelated people also described as priests. Must be some other kind of priest because we already had priests.
I was thinking that secretary and recorder were the same thing too. I wonder what the difference between those is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, does it relate to that psalm though? That you're a priest forever after the whatever the I know they don't like the language, the order of Melchizedek, but it's not order, like
Melchizedek.
pattern of
Yeah.
like, the king.
I don't
priest
know.
figure.
Okay,
Look.
just to respond to a comment, yes, the 15th of the month of Shvat just terminated, and this is yet another holiday in Israel. It's the beginning of the year as counted for trees. If you're a tree, this is your New Year celebration.
The trees get their
Yes,
own
this
New
is the
Year?
New Year. This is the day of the starting of a new year for trees.
Wait, today?
I'm sorry, I mean, this is the holiday we just celebrated yesterday.
You celebrated it
Look.
yesterday,
Just, yeah, it's ended this evening, yeah.
which would be okay.
The 15th of Shvat.
Oh.
So Jan God is reading the Septuagint, and it's interesting because the Septuagint is a very ancient, very old Greek translation. And in that translation, they could have picked the word for priest, but they say the sons of David were chiefs of the court, mayor of the palace. So
But
it would.
the Hebrew word is actually the word for priest, right? That's what
Yes,
you're
the Hebrew word is
Yeah.
the word for priest.
Yeah.
But it's.
So maybe those translators were onto something that is trying to
Well,
be brought out here. That it's
today,
something slightly different.
Yeah.
Today, but if the text is ancient, I suspect that words had different meanings there. I mean, it's a stumbling block. I keep stumbling upon words that don't mean the same anymore.
Right. Well, in some translations, even like the word minister, right? The minister will be the head of the church, but a minister will also be.
That's a great example.
Yeah, it's like what is that? What position of leader? Like you could be a minister for the government. You could be, if you're in the ministry, is it the ministry of the government or the ministry of a church? What do we mean by that, right? So yeah, I found some translations that did say officials. This is a good question, and yes, I'm glad to be having this conversation. It's difficult for me to have the conversation because I'm so on side of David becoming a priestly figure that I knew that I was just gonna look with too much bias.
Why are you on side for it? Like I feel like I'm not on either side, but I feel like it seems pretty clear that something's going on in that direction, or at least the text is implying something along that direction. But I could kind of care. Like I'm not on the side. I'm not pulling one either way. Like I want David to be a priest as well. It just seems like he's doing all these weird priestly things that make you question it. Which is.
I just want to make sure. Sometimes you see a pattern, then you overemphasize a pattern. Yeah, and I don't want to. I want to emphasize the pattern, not overemphasize the pattern.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was last week, Yosef made a point of making a distinction between priest and prophet, that they're not the same thing. So maybe
Yes.
David's sons or other people being priests isn't quite as odd, since he's Judah and not a Levite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I understand the language the thing, like Yo said, where there could just be happening. Like if you have a category for a word, it's like until you get more particular words, you're just going to use the same one to broadly sweep across this whatever ruler, could be priest, king, whatever. You're just kind of so like maybe they're using the word that way. But then like the previous actions of David, like you pointed out, where he like eats the bread, where he's wearing the linen ephod, it's like it's there's all these little things that just kind of add up to me where I still don't know what to make of him yet. I'm not necessarily saying he's a priest. It's just like I don't know. It gets ambiguous.
Well, what would
David,
be the function of a priest? Like what is the priest for?
Yeah, to me, when I use the word priest, when I try to explain it to another person, I say in between. The in between.
Mediator?
Yeah,
Okay.
mediator. It's a mediating function. I see that as what the priestly role is. Like even if you think of the high priest, he's the one who can approach. He's the one who can be an in between.
Yeah.
Right. Would that track with kind of imagery of kings being in between, having divine right to rule and being in between people and God?
Yes. I'm trying to think because sometimes it's even in what the root origin for Yoav, do you have any idea what the origin of Kohen is? Like besides, because sometimes it'll just mean like, no idea. Like my name means beloved, but literally comes from like David in Hebrew comes from an origin which means nipple, because it conveys the relationship between a mother and its infant, right? Like
Yeah, I was
nursing.
thinking about it hard ever since the question arose some 5 minutes ago, and cannot come with any connection. To answer your God, to ask how many slaves does David need? They're not coming to his house to serve him. They remained in a dome, just the status of slaves.
Let me pull up a resource real quick. Please talk amongst yourselves.
well, I was curious. I think, to Jason's question earlier as to why you kind of have an inclination to prove out David as a priest. Not by forcing it into the text, but you have sort of a bias there. Is it because David as being a type of Christ, and Christ, Jesus, having that dual roles of king and priest? Is that sort of what's behind that?
Yeah, that's my bias. That is my bias. It is, and Jason was kind of saying this when he was mentioning Melchizedek, that there is because Melech is king, right? He's the king of Salem, and he's the first example of a priest directly that we see in the text. So the Hebrew word kohen derived from an unused root meaning to mediate or officiate. So it is like what I was saying before, the role of the in-between, the mediator, the one who stands in between. And for myself as a Christian, that is God the Father is not a priest. The God the Son within Christianity is seen as a priestly figure, right?
I just came upon the meaning, suspected meaning of Kreti and Pleti. The idea is that the name was Plishti, just that the S was omitted. So if it was Plishti and you just omitted the S, you got Pleti. And Kreti is the name of the island Crete, from which the Philistine came from. So
the sea people. Yeah.
yeah, but specifically people from Crete coming to Israel as the sea people and calling and being called the Philistines while in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And David sort of, when he was among them, he gathered a group of loyal soldiers from the Philistines. And they didn't want to be called Philistines, so they dropped the S. So they will be called either people of Crete or Philistines without an S, so Kreti and Pleti.
Good research. Yeah.
In 2 minutes, yeah.
That's good. Yes, Mitch, you did catch me though. That's the problem is, and Jacob brings this up all the time, is that you're taught in like Sunday school the answer for everything is Jesus, right?
Well,
and so it's just like, is this actually a combined role? Is there something about these? Yeah, in Judaism, it's very important to emphasize the different roles that different people take.
well,
Yeah.
so were you going to say more, Mitch, or no? Okay. I guess I have a question because even excluding the Christian viewpoint, I mean, the Messiah is thought to be the son of David, right?
Yes.
As far as I understand. So then wouldn't this probably be accurate? Because is the Messiah also thought to be kind of a Melchizedek figure, or is that wrong within Judaism?
That's a much longer conversation.
Okay.
Judaism generally right now recognizes two messianic figures, the son of David, sometimes called Solomon, because Solomon is the son of David, and a second called the son of Joseph,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes called Ephraim, because Ephraim is the son of Joseph.
Yeah.
But if you and me should have a much longer conversation, is
Yeah.
if you
Well,
in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it makes an appearance in the Talmud, but isn't expounded upon, or at least I can't find it expounded upon, that there was 4 messianic figures.
okay. Well, this might be like an interesting. I mean, we spent probably way too much time on this little part anyway, but this might be kind of an interesting like verse to kind of hold on to as you keep going. Because I was just thinking, when you get to the Book of Kings, it feels like it's oddly specific on who it says who their father is, and weirdly, a king it'll say their father is their direct father, and then other times it'll say their father is David.
Right.
And so like it's weirdly looking at, I think, like a different type of identity rather than just the direct,
Well, and
you know,
it's always
genealogy.
related to character. They're only a son
Mhm.
of David if they're good.
Yeah. So maybe that's kind of,
Right?
I don't want to make this just weirdly symbolic in that aspect, but I feel like there's maybe something going on with that as well in that statement. David's
No.
son.
Yeah, David becomes the archetype. He becomes what the archetype is, and so it becomes like he sets a certain position, and then other people will do what David did to show who they like, to show their identity, to show why they're good, or pushing against it why they're evil. So there becomes an anti-David as well, where it's what's his name? Ahab is one of the anti-Davids. Jeroboam is an anti-David. They did wicked like Jeroboam their father.
Oh yeah.
I think comes up as well.
Son of the bot.
Which is also, we talked about this previously, where you could become a child of someone just by your action as well. So in the New Testament, Cain was of the evil one.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So like, but then that would lead me to believe that there could be multiple messianic figures according to the Davidic Messiah, not just the Josephite Messiah, but the Davidic one.
David, so the king,
Yeah.
the priest, the prophet, and Joseph. The king, the priest, the prophet, Joseph. Okay. See, it's sometimes called David or Solomon. That's the king. The priest is sometimes called Aaron, but sometimes called Melchizedek. The prophet, sometimes identified with Elijah, and Joseph, sometimes called Ephraim.
Yeah.
Guys, I really enjoyed it. I got to bounce, but thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming by, Mitch. Should we do more? The next chapter basically covers one story, and it's so sweet. I like it so much. We're just getting into my biases. Yeah, maybe we should. Yeah, go ahead.
About Cohen, treat it as a guess, but the word originated in Egypt in the sense of being rich and powerful, and then moved to Canaan, to the Canaanite people under the Egyptian rule, where it was used servant of the Lord, high-ranking servant of the Lord. And from then it came to Hebrew.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how much more I want to get into it, because I do think it's a very important role. Even within Judaism, they talk about this, that the idea that God would have a figure, that God cannot communicate with human beings directly. He needs a mediating he needs something to mediate between himself and human beings in order to communicate, even in order to create the world. And that seems to me like a priestly role. Yes, Messiah just means anointed. That's true. But then it has different connotations, because you would be anointed for, like, it literally means to smear. It comes from the Hebrew root to smear, because you smear oil on the guy's, or pour oil on the guy's forehead. You know what? Let's continue, because I like this other story. It's very sweet, and it's pretty simple. Jason, you read.
All right. And David said, "Is there still anyone left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now there was a servant of the house of Saul, whose name was Ziba, and they called him to David. And the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" And he said, "I am your servant." And the king said, "Is there not still someone of the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of God to him?" Ziba said to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is crippled in his feet." And the king said to him, "Where is he?" And Ziba said to the king, "He is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, at Lo-debar."
Okay, pause. Okay, pause. Immediately, I like this. David is like, is there anyone related to Jonathan still left alive that I can just do something nice for him? Right? Like, he's becoming more secure, because we talked about some of the pardons that happen when David is first put into a position, and that could be seen as very political. Like, he's making this public demonstration that people have been forgiving, we're moving on, right?
Yeah.
You could even think of, like, J.D. Vance had originally said some pretty nasty things about Trump. So Trump bringing him in as vice president could be seen as him fully forgiving, like doing some of that stuff. Yosef, you were needed. You were needed. We got into whole debates about what is a priest.
Yeah, maybe he'll
Jason,
help
that's
me.
okay. Yeah, because I'm logged into my. It's fine.
Bible study talking dancing from. Yeah, I liked here in this little part we read though. I like how at first he says kindness, then the second time he says kindness of God.
Yes.
I don't know.
So
Really
okay.
have
So,
much more comment.
sorry. So the line of thinking that I was saying is the first time that he's forgiving people, you could take as symbolic of more of a political move. Whereas I just sense so much sweetness in this part of David doing good, specifically like finding Mephibosheth, like, and just being nice to him, and that he's crippled. Like, it's just everything about it just has so much compassion to it. Joseph, the reason why we were talking was the end of chapter 8 says that David's sons are priests. We got into a whole conversation about it because I didn't want to push it too far because you know that this is my bias, Joseph.
Yes.
And so we went to I think we concluded that this was probably like meaning like a minister in the government, like a position of authority, not meaning Cohen. It's different.
Yes. That sounds right to me.
Can you think of any other place where Cohen is used this way?
I believe there's one other example in Tanakh, but he is used that way in other Semitic languages, which is not something to ignore.
Okay.
Which verse is it?
It's the last verse.
Oh, the last verse. Okay. Sorry, catching up.
That's all right.
And if you were about to end, then I'm totally like.
No, that's fine. Okay, you look it up. We've actually moved on to the next chapter.
Sure.
To cover the Mephibosheth story. So Cassandra, while Joseph is doing his research, will you continue reading? Oh, we're at verse 5 right there. There you go.
Then King David sent and brought him from the house of Machir, the son of Amiel at Lodabar. And Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face and paid homage. And David said, Mephibosheth. And he answered, Behold, I am your servant. And David said to him, Do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. And I will restore to you all the land of Saul your father, and you shall eat at my table always. And he paid homage and said, What is your servant that you should show regard for a dead dog such as I?
Okay, that's great because the dead dog business is how David referred to himself when Saul was after him. He used dog language to talk about David's lowly state. So that's very interesting that now a descendant of Saul is doing that. It's sometimes he is, if you look at artistic depictions, he will be walking with crutches. So he won't be fully lame because you have this reference where he fell on his face and paid homage. So how could he do that if he's lame? So sometimes he's walking with crutches.
Does pay homage mean that he did something like a bow, or is that more of like he brought something to give to David?
Yeah, it could be either. We get these exaggerated bows, and sometimes bowing 7 times as like really prostrating yourself before someone to show a respect to the king. Yeah, I think it could be either. Yeah. And I like this. You shall eat at my table always. So he's like, again, in the ancient world, Mephibosheth would have been considered a threat to David's kingship because Saul was king. right? So you'd have these people would oftentimes be killed or humiliated or all these other things, whereas David is actually taking the child of his enemy and honoring him. Yeah, and the end of Mephibosheth, spoilers, it becomes tragic because he'll come back one other time. Yeah. Does anyone else notice anything, or shall we continue on? Joseph, did you find anything already within the 2 minutes?
I want to do more, but yeah. So in Chronicles, when they repeat this chapter, essentially, or this part of the chapter, they do not use the word priests. They translate it essentially into or minister, whatever. They don't use the word kohen. Let's use that word so we don't get confused. Let's use the Hebrew word. Then use the word kohanim. They instead use it they're called liyad hamelech. They are the at the hand of the king, or sometimes we see that phrase used to mean a minister in this text. So that is a internal exegetical confirmation within Scripture. It's also the way that the Aramaic Targums translate it, is they translate it as ministers.
Yalad can mean servant, can it not? You said
no. This is not
Yalad.
This is liyad. So yad is hand. Liyad.
Okay.
To the hand, or at the hand of liyad hamelech.
And that's interesting because in the Septuagint, they translate it into Greek as just being, they don't use the word priest. So when I bet they used Chronicles to inform what word to translate it into Greek and didn't just translate it straight as priest.
Yeah.
See, I appreciate you doing more research, but I think that'll do. I think that's good.
Well, wanted to know if it's ever used in this way in another place, and I think it is. This phrase "liad hamelech" also, that to mean like to minister, as also comes up in Nehemiah. It's Petachia is the advisor of the. They translate here as advisor of the king, but it's the same phrase in Hebrew, liad hamelech.
Okay.
Is there, within Judaism, is there a resistance to wanting to see David as priest as well?
Well, yeah, it's impossible. Like, so the only possible priest is someone who comes from the patrilineally, so from his father's line through Aaron. And there is no concept of the order of Melchizedek. That's a very, very late development in Judaism. We don't find any evidence of it before the 1st century BCE. Right? That's that. We're talking about 700-800 years after this book is written, 500 years after, or 400 years after the Book of Chronicles is written. Like, we just don't have evidence of that. And we know that the few priests that try to do kingly things get in trouble for it, including, by the way, even David, when he takes the bread from Nov earlier, needed an excuse. He was not considered, right? Like, he couldn't just take it because he needed an actual excuse, and the text gives him that, right? The text says like he had to justify himself there. It was not just a straightforward like I can do this because I have this right.
Yeah.
And there's a very clear separation, and this becomes a very big debate in the Hasmonean period. The very clear separation, according to those who are reading these texts carefully and felt that these formed a model of government that was better, or not necessarily ideal, but better, was that you couldn't have kings who were priests, and the Hasmoneans basically were saying, no, you can. We are the kings who we're priests, and we claim the kingship. This gets into like a very big debate in the later, second half of the Second Temple.
Yeah, I guess I'm just sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, so I was just going to say, in some, I don't know how emphasized it is in Judaism, but the king is sometimes seen as a mediator.
Well, so that's specifically rejected by Judaism. That the king's mediator is specifically rejected by Deuteronomy already. Like, they specifically are rejecting, because in the ancient world, specifically ancient Mesopotamia, so this is a big difference. I mean, this is why we don't conflate paganisms. In Egypt, the king was a priest. The king was a god. He was an actual divinity, right? In He was the son of a god. He was a god. He was a god. In Mesopotamia, the kings were never gods. They were usually had the same rights as a priest. They weren't always the high priest, but they often had the same rights as the high priest, and they were considered the mediator and the ones who had the covenant with the god. They were the only ones with the covenant with the god, and that covenant was to impose law on the people. Deuteronomy and even in Exodus really fight against that, because they say the covenant is with all the people. Everyone, or at least all the males who are adult males, have to show up because they are all in the place of the king. And it is a much more egalitarian, I would say, view of this. So it's an explicit rejection of that model, and like even to the point where, like, even though Moses is special in the sense that he's the prophet that has the most connection to God, like the whole people are said to, of his generation, are said to speak with God mouth to mouth, not just Moses. That's a super important phrase, because in Egypt, only the king speaks to God mouth to mouth. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the subtext of all these phrases that are undoing this idea that the king is the mediator and the only mediator.
Yeah.
I would say in some sense Christianity revives this idea, this pagan idea, and brings it back into Judaism. But that's like a whole other discussion.
I hear a lot about like divine right to rule. I remember in history classes when we're talking about like English.
Yeah. So there's two parts to that, because there's like the ancient version and then the modern version, which kind of appears, I think, in like the 15th or 16th century in Europe, which it kind of is reinvents it. But it's actually a post-feudal invention, weirdly enough, if I remember correctly, because it gets into absolute monarchy. But yeah, so this is like very super complicated. It's a very political discussion in some ways, but yeah, I would say like the actual initial Hebrew Bible text is very much trying to undo the idea of that the monarch is the mediator, is special, and it very much is trying to separate powers, right? Of the priest is not the king, is not the main prophet. We can talk about there are kings and priests who have prophecy, but they are not the ones who are tasked with taking the other two. Natan has a very special role, right? Natan has to call David out, and even though David has prophecy too, and even Natan messes up, right? In the last chapter we read, Natan thought that God was going to disapprove of David's plan, and then when God actually talked to David, he was like, "Well, maybe not, or I'll approve it, but I'm going to drag my feet because I don't love this."
Even within that idea, the role of the Pope shifts, because for a very long time, the first councils that occur within the church are called by the emperor, not by the Pope. So even like how there becomes one of the Pope hats, it's called the triple crown. There's like a crown version of the Pope's hat, if you've ever seen it, where the popes were kind of combining the role of king and priest. But even within the Catholic Church, those roles were mostly divided, and it's actually a much later invention that you have those things combining. And it's kind of funny, Cassandra, because it starts to become a tradition in the West as these kings want to be seen as biblically connected. They start being anointed king, so that even when King Charles was made king, he is anointed with oil, right? Which was not originally part of the rituals in Europe. They're kind of like they took from the Davidic material and said, how do we kind of get some of that? I know we have a ritual where the king is going to be anointed with oil. Yeah.
You may have blessed her.
Yeah. Oh, she's come back.
Well, what he said makes sense to me, where you have like, so I don't know where to start. Hold on. Where you have like one, where it all kind of combines in one figure, then it would end up, I think, resulting in some sort of idolatry, where he said Christianity kind of revives this, where I kind of agree. It's the whole topic, I think, of, we don't have to go down that right now, but the idolatry of Christ that actually happens in the church, but where it has no I guess fractal dimension to it. I don't know the right way to say it, but it's all like in one specific figure, and then you end up falling down and worshiping that one image, that one idol or something. Whether that's the king god of Pharaoh or the Mesopotamian like priest king or whatever. But then I still kind of wondered, like even in yeah, like you mentioned for messianic uh, were they for messiahs or for messianic attributes
Yeah,
you
yeah.
mentioned?
So during we found it within the Dead Sea Scrolls material that identified. It's from Zechariah. The four corners of the altar get lined up with four architects, or the four builders, or how
The four
you say it.
craftsmen. Yeah, four
Yeah, yeah.
Four
craftsmen. Actually,
craftsmen. Yeah.
specifically and super importantly for Christians, four tectons. Right? That is Jesus's actual like job, the carpenter, whatever builder. The word
Is-
that is coming from, and the reason that Christians make the connection is because it uses that word in the Greek.
Oh, gotcha.
So the
Okay.
son of Joseph, the craftsman, which is a title that people will speak of Jesus, would be a reference to some of this material, or some of this.
Well, I just was wondering if there's supposed to be a looking forward to, with like even getting into the prophecies in Ezekiel and everything, and the son of David, all that language. If there's a looking forward to a type of figure who does have all those four things culminating in one person, or would that be too much of that idolatry aspect, like Joseph mentioned, where it's like this one figure is too, the only mediator at that point or something. I don't know.
Right. Well, I think it's also.
Go ahead.
There's also even earlier than that, like that Adam was like the one bad thing about the world is Adam was created alone. Right. That was the one thing that was lo tov. That was not good. That humans, are not meant to function as the single mediators, that we actually need some sort of at our own level, like network, like social network. There are other humans. Like one God and one man is not enough for a world to be good.
Yeah.
That is very interesting, because in the Christian thinking, the only human being who could bring those things together, because that role is divine, would have to be divine.
Right.
Like that idea of like
you have to make a God, because only God could serve as an individual thing that brings the multiplicity of humanity together in that way.
Right.
Which is essentially not humanity. Right. So it's a way to like kind of square, put a round peg in a square hole or whatever.
But the four corners of the altar are one altar.
Right, but they are still distinct corners. We can talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, like you need the four corners, and they each serve a purpose.
Okay, let's. I want to finish this off. So, Cassandra, please read for us.
Then the king called Ziba, Saul's servant, said to him, "All that belonged to Saul and to all his house I have given to your master's grandson, and you and your sons and your servants shall till the land for him, and shall bring in the produce, that your master's grandson may have bread to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall always eat at my table." Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, "According to all that my lord the king commands his servant, so will your servant do." So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. And Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. And all who lived in Ziba's house became Mephibosheth's servants.
Read the last verse.
So Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, for he ate always at the king's table. Now he was lame in both feet.
Why does it need to emphasize that a second time? I do know that in some stories it's crazy, because you sometimes would make sure that these princes could not rise up because you made them lame. So the famous story is Adonai Bezek cutting off the thumbs and big toes, that makes it so that they couldn't rule. You sometimes get some of these kings become eunuchs, or in the Middle Ages, like if they didn't kill you, they just like.
Aside from the survey numbers, what did you mean by the survey numbers?
Sound coming in. Sometimes they. Is that Jason? Sorry. Sometimes in order to make it so that you didn't have rivals, you'd like cut off the noses of someone. So if they could take away your kingship, to make sure that couldn't happen, they'd cut a nose off, cut ears off.
We had cutting the thumb off earlier in Judges, right?
Right, yeah, the thumbs and the big toes, Adonai Bezek. And he did it to other kings as well. So it's possible that's why it's emphasizing that his feet don't work, that he wouldn't have been seen as a challenger. But David is not treating this guy like as a subject. He will say, "I'm your servant," but David's going to treat this guy like he's a prince. That's the way that David treats him. So, yeah, very interesting.
Could the emphasis have to do with 2 Samuel 5:8, where it talks about, like, this is my translation. It says the lame and the blind who are hated by David's soul.
So I don't think so. So in that chapter, the idea becomes this one. It's talking about taking over Jerusalem, but the place being so well positioned, like so well garrisoned, that you could leave. You didn't need your best soldiers to defend it. You could leave it with people who were just like the worst, and it would still be a perfect position. It was the cakewalk. It was the easy place to defend. So you don't even need anything. You just keep the door locked, and you're safe.
Okay, yeah, I remember you talking about that now. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Yes, we will. We're gonna end it because I didn't see that. Sorry, Chezi. You can stay on this stream and watch our very good friend. He's going to be talking about Rambam. So we bless him. We're going to go. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Jason will continue this conversation off of here. It was a blessing. Thanks for everyone coming out. Thanks, Joseph, for coming in late. Goodbye, everyone. See you next week.